A wild Mustang, forced into captivity, endured endless days of brutal whippings. His body was covered in scars, his spirit pushed to the edge. No one believed he could fight back, until the unthinkable happened. What this Mustang did left everyone speechless. Get ready for an incredible journey of survival, courage, and a moment that changed everything. Stay with us as we unveil a story of rebellion, justice, and redemption that will keep you on the edge of your seat. The sun hung low over the dusty landscape, casting long golden shadows across the fence corral. Inside, a deep brown Mustang with a tangled black mane stood trembling. His ribs showed beneath his dirty, sweat-matted coat. His name didn't matter. His captor never cared to give him one. To the man who owned him, he was nothing more than a wild, stubborn animal meant to be broken. Jeb Calloway, a cruel ranch owner in his late 50s, stood near the fence, gripping a long whip in his weathered hands. His sunburned face twisted with frustration as he spat into the dirt. "You're going to learn, boy," he growled. "You'll either listen or you'll suffer." The Mustang flinched but did not back down. His dark eyes, full of fire, locked onto Jeb's with defiance. Jeb sneered. "Still not fighting you, huh? We'll fix that." The crack of the whip sliced through the air, landing hard against the Mustang's flank. He reared back, nostrils flaring, ing in pain, but he did not submit. Day after day, Jeb had tried to break him, tying him to posts, whipping him into submission, starving him just enough to weaken his strength, but never enough to kill him. Still, the Mustang refused. Jeb wiped sweat from his brow, stepping closer. "You think you're tough? You think you're special?" he hissed. "Ain't no Mustang ever beat me." He raised the whip again, but this time something changed. The Mustang lowered his head slightly, his breathing shallowed, and then his ears pinned back. For the first time, Jeb hesitated. There was something different in the horse's stance, something dangerous. Jeb tightened his grip on the whip. "Don't you even think about it," he warned. But it was too late. With one explosive movement, the Mustang lunged forward, and the impossible happened. The air in the corral was thick with dust kicked up by the Mustang's sudden movement. For days, weeks, he had endured the whip, the starvation, the cruel hands that sought to break him. But something inside him had shifted. This was the moment he wouldn't take another beating. Jeb Calloway barely had time to react. The Mustang lunged forward, not in fear, not in retreat, but in defiance. His powerful muscles, weak from starvation but fueled by instinct, coiled like a spring. His hooves slammed against the dry earth, sending a thunderous vibration through the ground. Jeb's eyes widened in shock. He had seen horses resist before, had seen them pull away, rear up, or even kick out in blind fear, but never this. The Mustang's dark, wild eyes locked onto Jeb's with something the man had never encountered before, a challenge, a warning. Jeb stumbled back, sweat rolling down his temples. "What the?" The Mustang reared up, his massive frame rising on two legs, towering over the man who had tortured him. His front hooves slashed through the air, powerful, deadly. Jeb had spent his entire life breaking horses. He had never been afraid of them, until now. For the first time, he felt the raw force of a wild animal that refused to be controlled. The whip fell from Jeb's hand, landing uselessly in the dust. The Mustang slammed his hooves into the ground with a force that shook the corral. Dust exploded around him like smoke from an unstoppable fire. Jeb tripped over his own feet, scrambling backward, his breath coming in short, panicked gasps. The Mustang stepped forward, ears pinned back, his powerful body tense. Jeb had whipped him daily, denied him food, treated him like a lifeless tool. But now, he was looking into the eyes of something he could never control. The other ranch hands watching from the fence were frozen in place, the usual smirks and laughter gone. The Mustang let out a sharp, guttural snort. Dust rose from his nostrils. He was no longer just a beaten-down horse. He was a force. Jeb tried to recover his pride, boiling over his fear. He scrambled to his feet, reaching for the whip. The Mustang lunged again. This time, Jeb knew better than to fight. He turned and ran. The men by the fence burst into murmurs, some laughing in disbelief, others backing away. Jeb Calloway, one of the meanest horse breakers in the county, was running from a horse. The Mustang stood tall in the center of the corral, his breathing heavy but strong. For the first time since he was stolen from the wild, he felt power again. He felt free. But this wasn't over. Not yet. Because Jeb wasn't the kind of man to let humiliation go unanswered. And the Mustang had just made an enemy out of the worst person possible. The Mustang stood his ground, his nostrils flaring, dust still swirling in the air from his powerful movements. Jeb Calloway had fled the corral, but the fight wasn't over. Not yet. The other ranch hands, who had once mocked the Mustang for his resistance, were now silent. Their usual arrogance was replaced with something close to respect, or maybe fear. Jeb's heavy boots pounded against the dry ground as he stormed toward the barn, his face twisted in rage and humiliation. No horse had ever made a fool of him, and he wasn't about to let this one get away with it. He threw open the barn doors, grabbing the first thing his hands found, a thick, braided lasso. His hands trembled, but not from fear, from fury. Jeb turned back toward the corral, his chest heaving, his pulse pounding in his ears. He would break that horse tonight. The sun had dipped below the horizon, casting a deep orange glow over the ranch. The Mustang stood alone in the corral, the other hands having disappeared, knowing better than to interfere when Jeb was in one of his moods. The air was thick with tension. Something was coming. The Mustang lifted his head, ears flicking toward the barn. A shadow moved, then Jeb stepped into the corral. This time, he wasn't holding a whip. He held a lasso, thick and unyielding. His fingers clenched tight around the rough fibers. The Mustang's muscles tensed. He knew what this meant. Jeb moved slowly, deliberately, his boots crunching against the dry ground. "You thought you won," he muttered, voice low and sharp. "You thought you scared me?" The Mustang held his stance, unmoving, unblinking. Jeb let out a humorless chuckle. "I'll show you what fear really is." And then he threw the lasso. The rope whipped through the air, aiming straight for the Mustang's powerful neck. But the Mustang was ready. This time he dodged to the side. The rope missed by mere inches. Jeb cursed under his breath, gripping the lasso tighter. He tried again. This time, the Mustang moved faster, his hooves kicking up dirt as he spun away, refusing to be caught. Jeb's frustration boiled over. He lunged forward, gripping the rope like a madman, his eyes burning with rage. But he made a fatal mistake. He got too close. And in that instant, the Mustang struck with a powerful kick. His back hooves shot out, connecting with Jeb's chest. The sound was sickening. Jeb was lifted off the ground, his body thrown backward like a rag doll, crashing hard into the wooden fence with a loud crack. The corral fell into dead silence. The Mustang stood tall, his chest rising and falling, staring at the man who had tortured him for so long. Jeb groaned, clutching his ribs, his breathing ragged. For the first time in his life, he was the one left broken. And the Mustang, he was still standing, still free. Jeb Calloway lay crumpled against the fence, gasping for air, his ribs throbbing from the devastating kick. The Mustang stood tall in the corral, his dark eyes locked onto the man who had tormented him for so long. For the first time, Jeb was the one powerless. The ranch hands who had once laughed at the Mustang now stood frozen by the fence, eyes wide with shock. No one dared to move. The Mustang snorted sharply, his chest rising and falling with deep, controlled breaths. The world seemed to stand still around him until a sound broke the silence. Jeb let out a low, pained growl, struggling to push himself up. His pride was shattered, but his hatred was still alive. He reached for the lasso that had fallen beside him, his fingers trembling as he clenched the rope. The Mustang caught the movement. He knew what that rope meant, and he wasn't waiting to find out what came next. With a sudden, explosive burst of energy, the Mustang turned and ran straight toward the fence. The ranch hands barely had time to react. "He's bolting," one of them shouted. The Mustang's hooves thundered against the dry ground, dust swirling in the fading light as he galloped full speed toward the wooden barrier. Jeb, still on the ground, could only watch in horror. No, but it was too late. The Mustang launched himself into the air, his muscles pushing past exhaustion, past fear. And then he soared. For a moment, it was as if time itself had frozen. The Mustang's body arched over the fence, his mane whipping in the wind, his powerful legs stretching to clear the wooden beams. And then he landed. His hooves slammed into the ground outside the corral. He was free. The ranch hands erupted in shouts, scrambling to react. "Get the ropes," one of them yelled. "Close the gate," another screamed. But the Mustang was already moving. His legs carried him faster than he had ever run before. His body was fueled by something more powerful than exhaustion: freedom. Jeb's voice cut through the chaos. "Get that damn horse back," he roared, clutching his ribs as he tried to stand. His face was twisted in fury, his pride wounded beyond repair. But he couldn't stop him. No one could, because for the first time since he had been stolen from the wild, the Mustang was going home. And this time, no one would break him again. The Mustang's hooves pounded against the hard earth, kicking up a storm of dust as he tore through the open field. His heart hammered inside his chest. Every muscle in his battered body burned with exhaustion, but he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. Behind him, the sound of engines roaring to life sent a jolt of fear through his veins. Jeb Calloway, barely able to stand after the devastating kick, had still managed to drag himself to his truck. His pride burned hotter than his broken ribs. "Get the damn gate shut," he bellowed, his voice rough with pain and rage. His men scrambled to obey, but the Mustang was already ahead of them, galloping toward the ranch's outer fence, the last barrier between him and freedom. Jeb threw himself into the driver's seat, his hands clawing at the ignition, twisting the key with desperation. The engine roared to life, and with a hard stomp on the gas, he lurched forward, tires skidding in the dirt. The Mustang's ears flicked back, catching the deep, menacing growl of the truck's engine. They were coming for him. His nostrils flared as he pushed himself harder. His strides were long and powerful, despite the pain coursing through his legs. His injured front right leg burned, but he ignored it. Ahead, the wooden fence loomed. He had two choices: try to jump or turn back and be trapped forever. His body was screaming in protest, but his spirit was unbreakable. The truck gained on him, kicking up a whirlwind of dust and gravel. The headlights glowed in the darkening sky. Jeb gritted his teeth, his hands white-knuckled on the wheel. "You think you're smart?" he snarled. "You think you're going to win?" But the Mustang wasn't thinking. He was feeling, and every fiber of his being told him this was his moment. The fence was seconds away. Now the truck was even closer. Jeb jerked the wheel, trying to cut him off. The Mustang leaped. His body stretched, his muscles coiling like a spring. His hooves cleared the top of the fence by mere inches. For the second time that night, he soared. And then he landed. His hooves slammed into soft, untamed earth. He stumbled, his injured leg nearly giving out, but he didn't fall. He had made it. He was out. Jeb's truck screeched to a stop, its front bumper slamming into the fence with a sickening crunch. For a moment, everything was silent. Jeb sat in the cab, his breath ragged, his hands shaking with fury. The ranch hands stood frozen at the gate, their faces pale with disbelief. The Mustang stood just beyond the fence line, his chest heaving, his eyes burning with something fierce and untamed. Jeb threw the truck door open and stumbled out, his face twisted with rage. "Get back here, you damn animal," he bellowed, his voice hoarse and cracked. But the Mustang didn't move. He stood tall, his ears pinned back, his powerful frame outlined against the vast, endless wilderness. Jeb took a step forward, and the Mustang turned and ran, not in fear, not in retreat, but in victory. And this time, no one was chasing him. The Mustang's hooves thundered against the open plains, his breath coming in heavy bursts as he pushed himself forward. The night air was cool against his sweat-soaked coat, his black mane whipping in the wind as he raced toward the unknown. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, he was running for himself. No ropes, no fences, no cruel hands holding him back. The distant glow of Jeb Calloway's ranch faded behind him, swallowed by the rolling hills and the vast wilderness that stretched ahead. He had made it, but he wasn't safe yet. His body ached. His front right leg still throbbed from past wounds. But he couldn't stop. Not yet. He had seen men like Jeb before, the kind who never let go, never accepted defeat. Jeb wouldn't stop hunting him. And so he ran. Miles away, a pair of headlights cut through the darkness. The steady hum of an old pickup truck echoed across the quiet road. Inside, Ethan Carter, a former Mustang rescue specialist, gripped the steering wheel tightly. His sharp green eyes scanned the landscape. He had spent years tracking down mistreated wild horses, working to bring them back to safety. But after too many failures, after watching too many horses suffer at the hands of cruel men, he had walked away from it all, until tonight. A friend had called him, tipping him off about a rancher who had been breaking a Mustang the hard way. The worst way, the kind that left scars deeper than skin. Ethan hadn't planned on getting involved. He was done with this world. But something inside him had nagged at him all day, an unease he couldn't shake. And now, as he drove along the quiet stretch of road, he saw something that made his breath catch in his throat. A horse alone, running. Not just running, fleeing. Ethan's hands tightened on the wheel. What the hell? He slowed the truck, his eyes locked onto the figure moving across the distant hills. Even from here, even in the dim light, he could see the exhaustion in the horse's stride, the way his legs trembled but didn't stop. This was no ordinary escape. This was survival. And Ethan knew this Mustang needed help. Without hesitation, he turned off the road, heading toward the running horse. Some rescues, it seemed, weren't a choice. They were destiny. The Mustang's legs burned with exhaustion, his breath coming in short, ragged bursts as he pushed himself forward through the darkness. His body ached. His front right leg still throbbed. But he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. Behind him, the world he had known, the pain, the whips, the fences was gone. Ahead, the unknown stretched wide open, waiting. But his body was giving out. The terrain became uneven. Dry brush scraped against his legs as his pace slowed. His vision blurred from exhaustion, and his hooves began to stagger beneath him. Then in the distance a sound, a low, steady hum. The Mustang's ears flicked forward. A pair of headlights appeared on the horizon, growing brighter as a truck approached. The Mustang hesitated, his muscles coiled, ready to run again until the vehicle slowed. The truck rolled to a stop, and for a moment there was only silence. Then the door creaked open. A man stepped out, his boots crunching softly against the dirt. He stood still, his posture relaxed. His sharp green eyes were filled with quiet understanding. Ethan Carter didn't move closer. He just watched. The Mustang snorted, stepping back, his body tense. His instinct screamed at him to run. But something about the man felt different. He wasn't holding a rope. He wasn't reaching for a whip. He wasn't trying to control him. Ethan slowly knelt, grabbing a canteen from the truck. Without a word, he unscrewed the cap and poured water onto the dusty ground in front of him. The Mustang's nostrils flared at the scent. His throat ached with thirst, but still he hesitated. Was this another trick? Ethan stayed still, letting the horse decide. Minutes passed. Then the Mustang took a step forward. His legs wobbled. His hooves dragged slightly in the dirt. But he moved, another step, then another, until finally he lowered his head and drank. Ethan let out a slow breath. This wasn't just a rescue. It was the start of something new. And as the Mustang lifted his head, locking eyes with Ethan for the first time, something unspoken passed between them. An understanding, a trust. He wasn't broken. He was free. And for the first time in his life, he had a choice. The Mustang stepped forward again. His body was still weak, but his spirit unshaken. Ethan didn't lead him. He didn't need to, because this time, the Mustang wasn't following out of fear. He was choosing his own path. And together, they walked into the night toward a new beginning. This story isn't just about survival. It's about the unbreakable will to be free. That Mustang's courage, it lives in all of us. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who loves inspiring stories. Let's keep spreading messages of courage and hope.